2009, President Obama pledged to extend a hand of friendship to repressive and corrupt regimes in countries like Myanmar, Iran, and Cuba. The recent move to restore diplomatic ties with Cuba has raised some questions about travel and doing business with an island nation that has struggled for 50 years to obtain everything from food to technology.
Joining us now, Congresswoman Karen Bass, representing the 37th District, which includes L.A., Century City, and Culver City. She is also a ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Africa, Global Health, and Human Rights. Welcome.
Good morning.
To see you.
Good morning. Good to be back.
So we know through polling that the majority of Americans think this is a good move to reestablish diplomatic relations with Cuba, but there are the critics, and some people say we shouldn't be doing business with a repressive regime like the one in Cuba. What do you say to this critic?
Well, just think about it. If we didn't do business with repressive regimes, our business would really be contracted quite a bit. So I don't think that that's a measure. I think it's a great thing that the president is reestablishing relations. I hope that Congress moves to lift the embargo completely.
And I think many Americans are going, well, I'm not sure how this is working. Can we travel there? Is it too soon? Should we wait? What are things like if we were to go to Cuba?
Exactly. And if you think about it, Cuba is the only country on the planet where U.S. citizens are restricted from traveling as a tourist. So you can go to Cuba. You can't go as a tourist. You do still have to have permission from the Treasury Department. But you could link up with a travel agency that knows how to do the requirements to go. But it's a very exciting place to visit.
And what do you find when you get there? I've had friends who've visited, European family members who've said, what is it with you Americans and not going to Cuba? They've been able to travel freely forever.
Well, that's one of the first things that you find. The whole world is there, and quiet as it's kept. About 100,000 Americans go there every year through the vehicle, that I described.
Yeah.
But you find a country that, first of all, is extremely peaceful and is very welcoming of Americans. And so because this has been such a mystery for so many decades, I think that's one of the reasons why we have such fascination for it.
Now, will it all change in the next couple of years? And all of a sudden we're going to see all these huge American hotels. We're going to be buying all those great old cars, and Cuban cigars will be exported.
I don't think so. And the reason why I say that is because Cuba has been open to the entire world, and it hasn't fundamentally changed a number of things, about the country. But right now, a number of the hotels there are partnerships with other countries. It's just not partnerships with U.S. companies.
And you were there recently. You were there in December.
I was there in December.
What did you take away from the trip?
Well, I went specifically, it was a congressional delegation because it's not just what we have to offer Cuba, but Cuba also has some things to offer us. So I've been interested in diabetes my whole life because of my family, and also I have a medical background. And the Cubans have invented a medication that can be used that will reduce the need to amputate limbs, which is a problem that diabetics get into in later years. And so they've been able to reduce amputations by 70%.
Wow.
So anything like that, hey, I want it tested here. I want it marketed here if it's actually valid. And so a number of us in Congress are pushing for this medication to be tested in the United States.
When we look at the video from Cuba, you see those cars from the 50s and 60s, and I would imagine there are also some infrastructure challenges right now.
A lot.
What will happen in the next years?
Well, I'll tell you, one of their biggest problems is transportation. It's not a problem for tourists because there's plenty of cabs. And by the way, those old cars are cabs.
Oh, okay.
So you can ride around Havana in them.
I see.
But one of the biggest infrastructure problems for us is the internet. So we're used to being connected 24/7 whenever we choose. Well, essentially, if you want to use the internet, you have to go back to your hotel. So they don't have a real strong infrastructure. And there's legislation that a couple of my colleagues have introduced that I'm looking forward to going back and supporting, and that's legislation that would allow U.S. companies to help build that infrastructure out. Why shouldn't we be a part of that? It's business opportunities, and it helps our economy.
Right. Some critics have questioned maybe the motives or the reciprocity of President Obama, why, making these relationships with Cuba, particularly, though, when it comes to the return of American fugitives living there, as well as millions of dollars in Medicaid fraud that is believed to be stashed in Cuba's national bank. What do you think about that? What have you heard?
The money that's potentially stashed there, I'm not aware of.
Yeah.
The fugitive issue is something that I know they are negotiating now. But you know, Cuba also has claims to a couple of fugitives here. There was a bombing of a commercial airliner in the 1970s, and according to the Cubans, we're harboring the fugitives that did that. And so those are things that are being discussed in negotiations. And I think in general, when President Obama took office, he did say he wanted to begin a new chapter in American history in terms of us having relations with other countries. Cuba is 90 miles away from the United States. It is the only country on the planet where essentially a handful of people have controlled our foreign policy. We have relations with all kinds of folks. Why wouldn't we have a relationship with an island 90 miles off of our coast with a population about the size of LA County?
Interesting.
Not exactly a threat.
Right. All right. Once again, Congresswoman Karen Bass represents the 37th District, which includes LA, Century City, and Culver City. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me on.
Great to see you this morning.
All right. Coming up, his